You know, I read somewhere that said if we treat people how they are, they become more of what they are. If we treat people how they could be, they become more of what they should be. Let's talk about this and what does this mean for forgiveness? Let's go. What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Zeb, your everyday life coach, and I provide you with practical tools for daily living so you can transform tomorrow today. Listen, I just came off an awesome weekend out of town, sharing with some friends, and really just a wonderful time of just really being filled up with all kinds of praise and adoration for just, an incredible journey that I've gone over the last couple of years. And I'll tell you, I really feel energized. I was so tired though this morning. The time change was really interesting, but I love the fall time change because I get up at 4:28 every morning. And so now it's early enough for me to get back on my 2-mile walks and incorporate that to my working out and all of this stuff. But I say all that to say now, I'm kind of a little tired, but still energized but just excited to continue with this bi-weekly providing you at least 2 YouTube videos a week. I'm getting back into my groove. I feel the groove coming back. And I'm excited to talk about today. If you want to change somebody, guess what? The easiest way to change a person is to forgive them. And we're going to talk about this. This is going to be powerful. But before we do me a favor. I want you to like this video. I want you to like our channel, subscribe to this channel. You can find us on all of our networks at Zeb the Third. That's on all of our social media networks. And if you really enjoy our content, not only like the channel, but hit that bell notification icon. You can be notified anytime we go live. And it also, when you hit like, does something to the algorithms to ensure that more people can see this content. It is our goal to be able to impact and reach as many people as possible. And so your simple liking and even commenting and sharing this video goes a long way. And so we would appreciate it. Now, let's get into this. I started off with that quote because I think that quote really gives some good context on how we go about changing a person, because if you thought the title was kind of tricky, maybe it was a little tricky. Maybe it was a little bit of clickbait designed for you to click this video. But the reality is there are only 2 really good ways to change a person. And we're going to connect this to forgiveness. There are really only 2 good ways. Number 1, I've got my notes here. Number 1 is this: show up as pure love in front of it. Right? When you show up as pure love in front of a person, eventually they're going to experience the pure love that you show up as, and it has no choice but to impact their lives, right? And so sometimes we spend so much time trying to physically and manually change a person when really change that comes in others really starts with us. I believe this. I believe that everybody is in essence us pushed out. And how we show up in spaces oftentimes determines, in fact, more than that, more times than not, determines what we receive in those spaces. And so if you want to change a person, there's really only 2 ways you can do it. Number 1, show up as pure love in front of them, meaning no motives, no intentions, being the best version of you that you can be, loving them unconditionally, supporting them unconditionally, and again, being the best version of you that you can be. Or 2, completely throw away the old version of them, right? If you completely throw away the old version of a person, that brings you to this road called forgiveness, because the reality is you can't forgive a person and still hold on to the old version of who they are. And it is so unfortunate but true that so many people try to forgive people, but they can't let go of the old version of them. Right? Go back and see the quote that I started off this video with. Well, if we treat people how they are, they will continue to be more of what they are. If we treat people how they could be, eventually they will become who they should be. Why? Because the only way we can treat a person how they could be is by throwing away the old version of who they are. How many times have you literally tried to forgive somebody, but you couldn't let go of what they did, right? Or You tried to forgive somebody and you couldn't let go of what they said. Or you tried to forgive somebody and you couldn't stop replaying in your mind the thing they said to you, the thing they swore they would never do to you, the thing they did to offend you. You could not get that out of your mind, but yet and still you were like, wait a minute, well, they're going to change. I believe they'll change. No, they're not going to change until you decide to change. And the way we get them to change, the easiest way we get them to change is to make the decision that we're not going to hold on to the old version of them. And this only happens when we decide to forgive. When you decide to forgive, you completely say, I'm letting go of the old version of them so that I can welcome in the best version of them that they have to give. Here are three things that forgiveness looks like. When we think about forgiveness, here are three things that forgiveness looks like. And this is important to know because I don't care how we spin this. If you're going to forgive someone, it's going to be, it's going to look like these three things, and it's going to involve these three things. And I think people go on this journey where they want to forgive people and move beyond faults and move beyond ways that others have failed them, or maybe you need to forgive yourself and you want to move beyond ways you failed yourself. But a lot of times we are not really clear on what forgiveness looks like. And I want to show you three things really quickly that really highlight what forgiveness looks like. Number one, forgiveness is an intentional choice. And so when you decide to forgive someone, you are making a purposeful, intentional choice to move beyond something, right? To look beyond a fault, to look beyond a flaw, to look beyond an error, to look beyond disrespect, to look beyond whatever a person has done toward you, or again, in the context of forgiving yourself, you're making an intentional effort to look beyond your own faults. But intent is so important. If you're going to forgive someone, it has to be intentional. Forgiveness has to be intentional in order to work. We don't forgive people on accident, right? I'll forgive you, when I feel like it, or, or we don't expect to forgive people and it just happens out of the blue. No. When forgiveness works, it is an intentional decision. You make the decision, I'm going to look beyond this. And it is that intent behind that decision that takes the sting of offense away. Don't ever forget that. When we intend purposefully to forgive someone, it is that intentional decision that takes the sting of the offense away. And suddenly, while you might feel some kind of way about being offended or hurt or whatever the case may be, when you make the intentional decision to move beyond it, it lifts the sting of the offense. All right. Number two, here's the second thing that forgiveness looks like. When we think about forgiveness, we understand that forgiveness is not a means to an end, but forgiveness is a means regardless of the end. Again, forgiveness is not a means to an end. Forgiveness is a means regardless of the end. What do you mean by a means to an end? Well, some people only forgive to get things out of people, right? I forgive you if you will do this for me. I forgive you if you will compensate me this way. I overlook this if you will do this, right? That's called doing things for an end, right? It is providing forgiveness as a means to get something out of the situation or out of a person or even out of yourself. But real forgiveness for real is doing it regardless of the end, right? It is forgiving people with no strings attached, right? Forgiveness that works is extending it with no strings attached. In other words, I forgive you. I don't even expect nothing from you in return. I forgive you, and heck, even if you you offended me and you don't apologize, I still forgive you, right? Ever met those people who only apologize, but then they apologize and be like, well, I remember growing up, and you see two kids, bother each other or hurt each other or offend each other. And, one kid might apologize and say, I'm sorry. And then say, now, what are you going to say? Right? That's forgiving as a means to an end. I forgive you if you will turn around and forgive me. Forgiveness for real that works doesn't work that way. When we think about forgiveness that works, forgiveness is a means regardless of the end, which says that if a person offends you, hurts you, harms you, it doesn't matter if they forgive you or not. It doesn't matter if they return the favor or not. It doesn't even matter if they If you apologize and they don't even accept your apology. True forgiveness is doing it regardless of the outcome. It's doing it regardless of what you might receive out of the deal. And when we understand that forgiveness looks like that, we understand the real power behind forgiveness. Third way, or the third thing rather, that forgiveness looks like is this. It is a true act of maturity. Forgiveness is a true act of maturity. I've discovered people struggle with forgiving because they struggle with maturity. And, the older I get, because maturity is not always connected to age. You can be 100 years old and be immature. Forgiveness isn't always connected to age, but one of the things that I've discovered, especially with age and just time and experience, that the more you mature, the more you understand that forgiveness really is an act of that maturity, right? The more mature you are, the easier it is for you to overlook wrongs. Why? One of the main reasons is because you learn how to see yourself in the flaws of others. You learn how to see your failures in the failures of others. You learn how to see your mistakes in the shortcomings of others. And so I've learned that as you mature, it becomes easier to forgive because it takes maturity to overlook a wrong. It takes maturity to overlook someone offending you, someone hurting you. It takes maturity to do that. And I think I may have said this in another video. If not, I'll say it again. The more you mature, the quicker you will forgive. You'll find that the downtime between offense and forgiveness shrinks as your maturity grows. And the more you grow in maturity and in grace, the shorter that mad period of time will be. Someone offends you on Monday, it won't take you 4 weeks to start talking to them again, right? Maturity says that if someone offends me, I'm going to decrease the amount of time that it takes for me to process what they did and to forgive them so that we can move on to the next thing. This is something I've learned from personal experience. I knew I needed to grow when offense would just hurt me forever, right? I ain't talking weeks, I'm talking months. I'd be holding on to stuff and I knew I had to let that stuff go. And that was a sign that I needed to mature more because again, it's human to feel offense. It's human to feel some kind of way when someone has harmed you. But as you mature and grow, you learn how to forgive just as quick as you were offended. And that takes maturity, all right? So when we do that, we understand that we then release people from creating more of what they did. I've discovered this too. When we hold on to what people did or who they were or what they did, we eventually end up creating more of that, right? So when you hold on to a way someone's offended you, if you're not careful, if you just sit back and watch, they will continue to do what they did because you have not even released them from the offense, right? We create more of the offense in people when we hold on to that offense. And the more we hold on to it, the more of it we create in our lives through them and sometimes through other people, right? You could actually need to forgive a person and then somebody else turn around and offend you the same way that you don't even know. And then you realize that the way this stranger offended you was nothing more than a reflection of your lack of forgiveness for the person that you know who offended you, right? We create more of those experiences in our lives when we continue to hold on to offense, right? I believe this, the Bible that I read says that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. What does that scripture mean? Well, it means the more I think of something, the more I experience that thing that I think of in my life. The more I have the chance to experience in my life those things that I think. And forgiveness works the same way. If you continue to think about offense, you get more of that offense in your life, right? Either from that person or from that person and other people. And so we actually not only free people from the offense when we forgive them, but we also release them to change. That's so important. You release people to change when you take the chains off of them from the offense and the ways they've offended you. And I hate to admit this, but I've been guilty of this. A lot of people have just done what they've done and done it repetitively and maybe even continue to do it. And while they are adults and have to take responsibility for what they do, one of the things that I discovered in the inner work that I've done is, maybe I had some responsibility in that by continuing to hold over their head the offense. When we continue to hold offense over people's head, we are in essence saying we want more of that, right? So you got to be careful with that, right? And not only that, while we are still hurt, right, over the way they've offended us, we actually restrict their ability to grow. We restrict their ability to become, right? You hold on to a way a person offends you, you're in essence drawing a box around them. You're drawing a box around them and you're saying, you belong in this box, right? The line around you is the way you offended me. And I'm going to keep you in this box. Every time I remind you of what you did, I'm keeping you in this box. Every time I think about what you did, I'm keeping you in this box. Every time I get upset thinking about what you did, I'm keeping you in this box, right? Anytime we do that, what we're doing is restricting the way a person can grow and develop and become and mature, because the box completely eliminates grace. You've got to make sure that you don't restrict someone's ability to change by keeping them in the box through unforgiveness. When we don't forgive, we're drawing a box around a person, right? You maybe never thought about forgiveness this way, but I want you to consider thinking about it this way. If you don't forgive a person, you in essence are putting a box around them. And you're saying, because you did this to me, because you said this, because you offended me in this way, this is the box you belong in, and I'm going to keep you there until I feel like bringing you out. And we can't expect people to change and grow. We restrict their growth and their ability to change when we put them in a box. So you've got to be careful not to restrict the growth of people through unforgiveness. All right. Not only that, we also recognize then that the opposite is true. When we immediately shift the way we change people, then, or rather, when we immediately shift the way we see people, we immediately see a change in them, right? And so sometimes through forgiveness and shifting the way we see a person, you begin to see the fruits of that change in them by shifting how you see them. Again, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It's not just about him, but it's about everything in his or her life. We can shift who people are by shifting what we think about them. And this change doesn't have to take all day. My kids, I give them a hard time when they're doing their homework because they're very smart, brilliant kids. And I know, I was telling a friend of mine today, I think my kids would far rather have their teacher than have me. I remember during the COVID years, I was having to teach them at home, and they hated doing work at home with me because it was not a cakewalk at all. But it's because I understand the potential that I have. But one of the things that I've had to learn to do is make sure that they see themselves the way I see them. And when we forgive people, that's what we're doing. We're saying, listen, I'm not ignoring how you offended me. I'm not saying that how you offended me was okay. That's by far not the purpose or point of this video. I'm not saying that how you treated me is okay or how you offended me is okay. But what I am saying is I choose to forgive you because I see you as a much bigger person than this. I see you as a much greater person than this challenge, as a much greater person than this flaw, as a much greater person of the way you've offended, right? And so when we do that, we immediately change people when we shift the way we see them. And the easiest way to shift the way you see a person or begin to shift the way you see a person is by forgiving them, right? Undressing them with their offense and clothing them with grace and clothing them with the potential that you see in them, all right? And then finally this, when you do that, right, when you begin to shift how you see them, then all of a sudden, how you observe them will then change how they show up. Right? So if I am shifting the way I see a person, then all of a sudden how I see them is going to show change the way they show up in my life or going to show up in your life. It's, again, go back to the example with my kids in homework, right? When I begin to tell them, yes, you are smart, Giselle, yeah, you can do this work. Yeah, you're capable of doing these math problems. Yeah, you're capable of excelling in your reading or whatever. When I begin to instill in them the way I see them, then suddenly their confidence goes through the roof and they begin to see themselves the same way I see them. Forgiveness works the same way. See, when we shift the way we see a person, It's going to change the way we observe them. When we shift and decide to forgive a person, it's going to shift the way we observe them. And when it shifts the way we observe them or see them, then all of a sudden it's going to change the way they show up. They're not going to show up automatically on edge because they know you've forgiven them and you see their potential. They're not going to automatically show up, feeling some kind of way or with some kind of attitude. Why? Because they know you've not only forgiven them for real, but that you've expressed to them, listen, you offended me, but I see you as a much greater person than this. I see you as a much bigger person than this. And so I don't think we realize that technically you can't change a person. You don't have that much power. It'd be nice if we all had a magic wand we could wave over people's head, right? But the reality is none of us have that much power. You can't change a person. But what you can do is you can shift who they are by forgiving them. When we forgive them, it changes how we see them. When we change how we see people, we automatically shift the way they are. And when we begin to shift how they are in our minds and how we observe them, then we begin to shift how they show up in our lives. They show up nicer when you've forgiven them for the offense. They show up with more kindness when you've forgiven them about the way they've offended you. We shift people by changing how we see them. And this all happens through the core of forgiveness. I want to challenge you, if you're watching this video, maybe you're struggling with forgiveness. I want to challenge you. If you need to forgive a person, I want to challenge you to just simply make a little T-chart on a piece of paper. Put on the left side everything that they did, perhaps to offend you, whatever it is that you need to forgive them over. And then on the right side of that chart, I want you to write down the ways you see them, right? Regardless of the offense, I want you to write down the ways you see them in the context of their potential. What kind of person are they really? What type of person do they have the potential to be? What have been your positive experiences with that person beyond the offense? And what you need to do is focus less on the left side in the offense and focus more on seeing them according to the right side of that T. Because when you do and you start focusing on their potential and the great experiences you've had with them and the positive things that they are and could be, then suddenly they begin to show up in your life that way. Why? Because you made a conscious decision, hey, I ain't gonna focus on the offense. I'm gonna focus on who I know you to be, who you can become, and who you have the potential to be. When you do that, then all of a sudden, again, you immediately change how people show up when you change how you observe them, when you change how you see them. And the quickest way to change how you see a person, to begin that change, is to learn how to offend them. Listen, if this video made sense, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to like the video. Again, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you leave a comment. We'd be more than happy to respond to you. And of course, hit that bell notification icon so you can be notified of any videos that we have. Listen, you got two jobs. One, I want you to be better today than what you were yesterday. And two, don't forget what I told you. Now go after it.